So supposedly, this is what the fallen angel Lucifer looks like. And this is what the moon looked like on March 31st, 2020. I don't know about any of you guys, but this is scary, especially with everything going on in the world right now. Pretty cool!
Blood-curdling facts that you wish you never knew, Part 1. When creating the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland, they couldn't create skeletons that looked realistic enough, so they used real human skeletons. Since then, they've removed all but one. Ducks sometimes become cannibals due to boredom, meaning they kill and eat each other. This behavior begins as early as 4 weeks old. Crocodiles are capable of galloping, similar to a horse. Luckily, alligators cannot. And while we're at it, tarantulas can swim. It's extremely common after you die that there will be extreme gas buildup and you will burp after death. And sometimes dead bodies can even sit up on their own. Also, if a pregnant woman dies, the gas buildup in her body can actually forcefully push a baby out. In other words, a post-mortem baby bazooka. Hearing is the last bodily function to go after one dies, so it's very possible that the last thing you ever hear is the paramedic calling off your CPR.
Creepy facts you probably didn't want to know. Part 4. No one knows who lives in this house, named the John Lawson house. Every day, this porch is occupied by a varying number of female mannequins. The number of mannequins, the positions that they're in, and the clothes that they're wearing changes from day to day. No one knows who's moving them or why. However, people do believe that the mannequins are there to convey a message. In 1871, a train crashed just 200 feet away from this house. It killed 22 people. And for some reason, the mannequins are always pointing in the direction of the crash.
Yes, the picture at the end is real. In 1876, a woman from a very prominent family in Paris goes missing. After years go by and no one has a clue what happened to this woman, friends and family ultimately mourn her death and move on. 25 years later, and this anonymous letter shows up on the Attorney General's desk, claiming that the missing woman's family had a secret. Intrigued by the letter, the police go to the family's home, show it to them, and ask to search the property, to which they say, go for it. They search, they don't find anything, but on the way out, they notice something very peculiar. At the end of some stairs was a door that was padlocked shut. When the family refused to open it, the police break it down and make a horrifying discovery. Cowering on a rotten straw mattress in a pitch-black room was the missing woman, now 50 years old and extremely malnourished. Her mother had imprisoned her there after they had fought over her boyfriend, and she had not seen sunlight or another human being in 25 years.
Some viewers may find this disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Top 3 most painful torture methods. Number 3. The Brazen Bull. A hollowed out bronze bull with a door on its side. The victim was locked inside and a fire was set underneath it, heating the metal, until the victim was roasted from the inside. The bull was constructed in a way that the victim's scream would sound like a bull was crying for help. Number 2. Disruption dismemberment. Each of the victim's arms and legs were tied to a horse, walking opposite ways, slow at first, then quickly, tearing at the joints, leaving the victim to bleed out. Number 1. The tub. The victim is placed in a wooden barrel with only his head sticking out. Their face was smothered with a mix of milk and honey. They were then forced to eat what was left on their face, giving them bad diarrhea. In turn, that would attract maggots that would eat their bottom half slowly from their infected wounds. This has been known as one of the most painful and long torture methods.
This is the scariest Easter Bunny story you will ever hear. But is it true? In 1949, a man in a bunny costume was commonly seen wandering the streets of Fairfax County, Virginia. This man would go outside and watch the children play every single day. And when they asked him who he was, he just said he was the Easter Bunny. He would watch these kids until they went inside their homes, so he could figure out where they live. At night, he would break into their houses and kidnap the children after hacking up their parents with an axe. The police finally connected the strange murders and the kidnappings to the bunny, but they could never find him. No one knew where he lived or who he was. The police decided to do a night patrol, and sure enough, they found the bunny walking towards the house with an axe. The police pulled their car over and heard the bunny singing, "Here comes the Easter Bunny, hacking up all the parents I can. Hippity hoppity, bloodshed's on its way." The police yelled at him to freeze, but he didn't. They got out of the car and warned him to put the axe down or they would shoot. Part 2 coming.
What is a fact that could possibly save your life? If you encounter a mountain lion, do not turn your back on it. Walk backwards. Cats are ambush predators. They don't want to fight you head on and will wait for you to turn around to attack. In a crisis situation, people run from the door they came from. When the shooter walks into a restaurant, run for the kitchen. There's always an exit through the kitchen, and very few people will think to run there. Plus, if you're not armed, a kitchen is full of killer cutlery to defend yourself with. If someone is trying to abduct you, and fighting back or yelling for help doesn't work, then pretend to faint, or vomit on them. If those tactics don't work, then take the chance of getting stabbed or shot to escape. Once you get in the vehicle with the abductor, your odds of surviving are less than if just injured in public. 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. If you are ever caught in an avalanche and buried under the snow, spit. Gravity will tell you which way is up.
Creepy stuff that's happened to you lot part 2. This happened about 3 years ago. I woke up about 7 AM for school as normal and got on with the everyday routine, brush hair, get dressed and eat breakfast. When I was done, I got in the car and went to school. When I got there, everyone was acting like I was invisible. When the teacher shouted my name in the register, I responded and she marked me down as absent. I went to call my dad because I was upset, but I realised I didn't have my phone. This went on for the whole day. At the end of the day, I got in the car and went home. I went to my room to go and lie on my bed when I saw myself in my bed. I screamed and woke up in my bed crying, with my dad sitting next to me saying she's finally awake. I couldn't wake up, and when I asked what time it was, he said it was 4 PM and that I'd missed a whole day of school because I was in a sleep coma. My dad made that term up. But when I went to school as normal the next day, I remembered all the lessons and everything from the day before. I believe that I had an out-of-body experience, but I can't be sure.
This is why you should never stay awake past 3 AM. A woman in her early 20s was away from home on a business trip. The night before she was supposed to board her plane, she had trouble sleeping and had this intense fear that someone was staring at her in her room. She was up until 3, tossing and turning until she started to hear whispers. It was a deep voice repeating the words, "I'm coming to get you, I'm coming to get you." But she ignored it and eventually fell asleep. After her plane landed, she was exhausted but drove home anyway. About 30 minutes into her drive, she started hearing the same whispers from the previous night, but she thought it was because she was sleep deprived, so she kept driving. She was almost home when she began to feel sick. Her eyes were watering, her nose was running, and she let out a large sneeze. "Bless you," said the same deep, eerie voice. She quickly pulled into her driveway, hugged her husband, and sat down to tell him what was going on. When this happened,
I can still hear that voice.
Disturbing facts you didn't ask for, but you're getting anyways. Now, I love The Wizard of Oz. It was my favorite movie growing up. But did you know that a lot of messed up things happened during the filming of this movie? Judy Garland was forced on a diet of soup, crackers, and 80 cigarettes a day. She was routinely groped and molested by a lot of the Munchkin actors. She was forced to film many hours every day and then given drugs to help her sleep. This actually contributed to her drug addiction and eventual overdose. She was even slapped by one of the directors on set. Additionally, there's a rumor that one of the Munchkin actors hanged himself on set, which many people believe can be seen in the background on one of the scenes.
send this video to someone that is absolutely terrified of clowns. A young boy named Nathan was walking alone to meet up with some friends at a nearby carnival. When he arrived, they rode roller coasters and eventually made their way to a circus tent with live performers. They went inside and saw a group of clowns performing. They were dancing, juggling, and one of them was riding a unicycle. The boys got closer to the stage, and the one riding the unicycle slipped and fell, and his red nose landed right beside Nathan, who picked it up, put it in his pocket, figuring the clown had plenty more. After the show was over, Nathan was walking back home when suddenly he heard a slight chuckle. He turned around and shined his flashlight. He could make out a shadowy figure holding a sharp object in his hand. The figure said in a creepy, sinister voice, "I believe you have something of mine." Nathan slowly backed away, pleading, "No, I don't. Please leave me alone." The figure stepped into the light. It was the clown from the carnival. He said, "Well, if you're not going to give me my nose, I'm gonna need yours."
This photo is not at all what it first appears to be. Part 10. This just looks like a selfie, but it was actually used to solve a murder. It was taken on May 24th, 2015. That is Cheyenne Antoine and that is Brittany Garwell. And the next day, Brittany's body would be found on the outskirts of Saskatoon, Canada. She died by strangulation by a belt that was found at the scene. And police were able to link that belt to the killer because she's wearing it in this photo.
This is why you should never watch my videos before going to bed. In 1986, a young girl opens her closet to find a man wearing a dress and holding an axe. He grabs her and ties her up, and then walks around the house and does the same thing to the rest of her family. While the guy is ransacking their house, one of the kids breaks free, runs next door, and tells his neighbor. The neighbor calls the cops show up, the family's saved, but the guy is nowhere to be found. The family leaves the house and stays with relatives in hopes that they'll catch this guy before they have to go back. But after a few weeks, they haven't caught him, there aren't any leads, and they say, you know what, we'll go back to our house anyways. As the family's pulling back into their driveway, the father looks up at one of the windows and sees, for a split second, the head of the man with the dress in their bedroom. They call the police, who go in and find pennies glued to the ceiling and weird writing all over the house, but they can't find this crazy guy. Until one of the officers found a secret crawl space in the basement, where psychotic killer Danny LaPlante had been living for 2 months.
I saw this thing that a lot of people were doing on TikTok called randonauting. It's an app that you download and it gives you a completely random location close to you that you go to, and apparently it's supposed to be a glitch in the simulation or something like that. I don't really know if I believe it or not, so I downloaded the app and I thought I'd try it out for myself. It gave me a spot in the middle of the woods that's kind of close to my house, but it looks like it's along ATV trails, so we're on the ATV and let's go see where it takes us. Alright, so we're at the location and this is weird. There's a car just chilling in the woods. How did they even get in here though? Like, there's trees everywhere. There's no way a car could get in here. This car looks super old. What the fuck was that? Holy shit.
The picture behind me might look like a normal photo, but it's actually one of the most sinister, real-life haunted photos in history. Taken by a professional photographer in 1972 as guests arrived for a wedding, everything in this picture looks happy and normal. But if you take a closer look at the man standing in black, you'll see something odd. You can actually see somebody in white crouching behind the man. All 4 of the people in the picture said that there was no one behind them when it was taken. The photographer said the same thing, and that it would be impossible for someone to crouch behind them without him seeing them. This is a better picture where you can actually see the guy's legs, and then in the top you can see his eyes. The picture was even examined by police photographers, and they confirmed that it was genuine.
Here are some things that actually happened at Disney parks that'll scare the hell out of you. First up, we have one that literally sent shivers down my spine. A teen once drowned trying to swim from Tom Sawyer Island back to the main Disneyland park. That's right, 2 brothers snuck out and hid on the island until park closing. They then tried swimming back to the main park, the older with the younger one on his back. But the older one went under and they found the body the next morning. I think they actually closed that attraction down because of that story too. Pretty scary. Next up, we have one that's super creepy. But people consistently try to dump the ashes of their loved ones on Disney's property. This actually is a girl that got caught doing it. This has supposedly become such a big problem over the years that employees have been trained on how to handle a guest when they think remains are being scattered around Disney. Next up, we have a super scary one. But the spirit of a little boy actually lurks in the haunted mansion in Orlando. Cast members have said they hear him giggling and mimicking the hurry back lady after the ride shuts down at night. Pretty cool!
This is why you should always watch what you say in public. In the late 1970s, a man began breaking into homes in order to assault the families inside of them. After dozens of attacks and no suspects in custody, the citizens were totally on edge, so the police decide to host this town hall meeting so they can discuss the situation out in public. During the meeting, a local man stands up and says, "I would totally kick that guy's ass if he came anywhere near my wife." Then, in a crazy, ironic turn of events, that angry man and his wife become the next victims. Following their assault, the attacker completely changes his behavior. He goes from kind of petty home invader to full-blown serial killer, targeting only married men and their wives. When decades later, police finally identify Joseph D'Angelo as the killer, as they're going through old photos from the case, they make a startling discovery about his motives. D'Angelo had attended that town hall meeting.
This is the story of the man who killed Jeffrey Dahmer. To Christopher Scarver was a junior in high school when he was kicked out of his mother's house for being an alcoholic. He then took a job as a carpenter in training and was promised that when he completed his training, he'd be hired full-time. Unfortunately, the man who promised him this was let go and replaced by a man named Steve Lohman. Christopher was enraged when he didn't get his job, so he went to Steve demanding his money and shot him in the head 3 times after receiving it. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and convicted and was sent to life in prison with fellow inmate Jeffrey Dahmer. Dahmer was a convicted serial killer and sex offender who had murdered and eaten over 17 boys. One morning, the two were assigned to clean the prison gym. When Jeffrey turned his back, Christopher murdered him with a 20-inch bar from the weight room. He received 2 additional life sentences, and when asked why he did it, he said that Dahmer made him extremely uncomfortable and wasn't sorry for what he did.
Things you miss in this movie which somehow make it even creepier. Caroline meeting these 3 ghosts was actually foreshadowed. When Caroline has dinner with her other parents, we see the silhouettes of the kids whose soul she's eaten hanging on the wall. When lightning strikes earlier in the movie, the bolt foreshadows the other mother's hand. The song that the other father sings to Caroline is a warning of what is about to happen. Lyrics include "She's a doll, button in the eyes, and her eyes will be on Coraline." The key that Caroline uses to open the door into the other world has a button on it. Aside from the father's song, all the other songs are sung in gibberish. The other mother can be seen humming them throughout the movie. These lyrics make the movie seem real but not quite right, just like the other world. Mr. Babinski's medal shows that he helped with the cleanup of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster. The radiation could explain his blue skin.
Top 3 photos before disaster. Number 3. Parkour. This photo shows Pavel Kashin performing a backflip on the wall's ledge. His friend took this photo mid-flight. Sadly, his stunt led to his death, as he lost his footing on the way down and fell to his demise. Number 2. Niagara crash. This here is Joseph Avery. When his boat crashed, he and 2 others fell out, and sadly, the other 2 were killed instantly. But somehow, Avery clung to a rock for nearly 18 hours while waiting for a rescue boat. Unfortunately, the moment he stepped onto the rescue boat for safety, that boat also capsized, then finally killing him. Number 1. Columbine. This is teacher William Sanders. He stayed to guide over hundreds of students to safety during the Columbine tragedy. He saved countless lives, but unfortunately lost his own when he was later shot in the chest twice during the Columbine massacre.
Damn, that next one.
We're helping save her right now from. There's a guy behind you that's like trying to creep on her. This guy.
Yeah.
He's gonna keep following you?
Yeah.
Oh, well then stay with us.
Yeah, stay with us. Yeah, he's still staring at us. He's still staring at us.
Wait, why is he still looking at you?
I don't know.
Okay, but you should put the guy on camera so if anything happened to her, you have his face. That guy's
Okay,
creepy.
he's going. He's leaving now.
So wait,